Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the October 2025 meeting of CPO1. We have a busy schedule tonight, so we will get right to it. I am going to share our land acknowledgement image here. No, is it showing up? I'm not seeing it. There we are. We acknowledge the people on whose land we live, the Atfaliti Kalapuyans, also known as the Tualatin Band of Kalapuyans, the first inhabitants of Washington County. We are grateful for the land we're on, Kalapuyan land. Signers of the Willamette Valley Treaty of 1855 were removed from their homelands to the Grand Ronde Indian Reservation. Today, their descendants are tribal members of Grand Ronde and Siletz tribes, carrying on the traditions and cultures of their ancestors. We acknowledge and express gratitude for the ancestors of this place and recognize that we are here because of the sacrifices forced upon them. In remembering these communities, we honor their legacies, their lives, and their continuation in our community. I'd like to invite all of us to reflect on the role government has played in the painful colonial history and reflect as well on the resilience and healing of the Indigenous land and communities. We invite everyone to collaborate and work together with the tribes to take care of the land and water and the people who inhabit these spaces. And with that, I will just briefly go over the agenda. We will have service provider updates. Let me see, do we have anyone? Yes, we do. Tualatin Hills. I like to just mark off who we've got here. Do we have someone from Clean Water Services? I do not see anybody. If I miss somebody, just raise your hand.
Yes, Lindsay's here from, she's here from Tualatin Valley Water District.
Okay. Yeah, I know that. That's different from Clean Water Services. Beaverton School District, I don't see anybody. TVF&R. Do we have TVF&R tonight? Maybe they'll pop in later. And I did see County Chair Pam Trace. Very good. And then following THPRD, Tualatin Valley Water.
County Commissioner.
Yes, I mentioned that. Following those brief updates, we'll also hear from the Sheriff's Office and the Cedar Mill Library on the levies. And then at approximately 7:35, we'll get into the program about the Cornell Road recovery. And hopefully we'll have time at the end of that for member announcements, questions, and comments. So let's go ahead and hear from Tualatin Hills Parks and Rec.
Hi, everybody. Can you see?
Yep.
Can you see me okay?
Yes, and that nice background.
Oh,
One
great.
of the nature play areas?
It's at Recuerdo Park. It's kind of a water access area to take a, yeah. Okay. Well, my name's Nicole Paulson. I am the planning supervisor at Tualatin Hills Park and Rec District. I am also the liaison for CPO1 here. So thanks for having me. Wanted to give you just a couple of quick updates of things happening at the district. One is that our bond task force is underway, and that is community members have been meeting to review the different district's draft proposal for a potential bond measure in May 2026. You're more than welcome to go to our website to check out a little bit more than that. The task force is expected to share their recommendations with the board of directors in December. Newt Day is back at Tualatin Hills Park Nature Center. That'll be held on November 8th from 12 to 4. It's a great event. It's free, courtesy of the Friends of Tualatin Hills Nature Park. We have the emerald ash borer detection and response. We were doing monitor checks out at Hazeldale Park, and we did discover emerald ash borer. It's an invasive forest insect that attacks and sadly kills ash trees, posing a serious threat to our local urban forest. And we are working very closely with other agencies to conduct assessments and implement necessary safety measures to address the health of ash trees on THPRD land.
I've heard that there's actually a chemical treatment that can be used on the trees. Is the Park District planning to do that, you know?
Virginia, that's a great question. I am not familiar with that, but I'm happy to take that question back and answer and let you get an answer for you and let you know. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. And then we've got winter high school basketball registration coming up. We've got a lot of events happening, our youth leadership opportunities for teens ages 13 to 17. Coaching, we always need coaches. If you're interested in coaching or know somebody that is, please have them go to our website. I'll put our website in the chat. And yeah, if you have any questions, I'm happy to take those.
Do you have any idea if the district is planning to do another bond measure to help us bring some of our properties into use up in this area?
To bring THPRD properties or
yeah,
or
we have quite a few unused park properties, kind of warehouse park properties, and we're all looking forward someday to having them developed as parks.
Yeah, we are looking at a potential bond measure that our task force is working on providing some recommendations for and how we move forward with funding that we would potentially acquire. I do know that our parks functional plan lists out our prioritization criteria for undeveloped sites. So I'm not exactly sure where that would land if a bond did happen, but I'm sure that would be vetted out through the bond task force process.
Maybe CPO 7 and CPO 1 can do some advocating for including them.
I have a little bit of information about the emerald ash borer. There is an insecticide that can be injected under the bark of healthy trees, and it will kill the larvae that burrow around.
Right.
But it has to be administered every couple of years, and it's a kind of a stopgap, but it can be done. You can protect ash trees if you're willing to be diligent.
Yeah, I will gather a little bit more information and be happy to share that with you.
Great. If we get it in time, we'll put it in the November issue of Cedarville News.
Well, actually, the Master Gardeners are presenting on the emerald ash borer and the Mediterranean borer in October. It's in the news.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Does anybody have any questions for the Park District? We will move on to Tualatin Valley Water.
Hi, everybody. Lindsay Walknick here with Tualatin Valley Water District. Just a couple updates for you all. We are just finishing up a couple of water main projects in the area of CPO 1. One is on Northwest Circle A Drive. We replaced about 375 feet of main over on that street. Also, we just finished installing about 800 feet of new water main on Northwest 123rd Place, and we are paving that area this week. Let's see, we have our board that's going to vote on our proposed new rates for 2025 and 2027 this Wednesday, so tomorrow at 6 p.m. The proposed increase is a 3% for a typical family in November of 2025, if that is approved. The main reason why rates are rising is because we're investing in the Willamette water supply system, which is a new system and a new water source that is going to come online for our customers in 2026. Let's see, we have one more, just a quick reminder, it's starting to get cool. We encourage you to consider insulating your exposed pipes in unheated areas like in your garage or your attic, and know where your water shutoff is in case of a pipe burst. So those two items will help you kind of get ready for winter. We're also going to be holding a virtual information session on cold weather prep. That's going to be later in October or in early November, and I'll make sure to get CPO one that information when it's set. And that's about it for me, unless there's any questions.
We also want to remind people to weatherize their irrigation systems.
Good point.
They don't have busted irrigation pipe. And I think you have a page on your website that helps with guidance on that.
We do. And you can just go to our website at tvwd.org to get some of that information.
It's a good informative site.
Thank you.
Oh, we got a couple of questions. Misty.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Great. So this question is for Twelve Valley Water District. What type of research have you done to support this increase in terms of other major metropolitan areas, what their water rates are, how this compares? My water bill is high compared to people I know in similar size metropolitan areas in other parts of the country that don't have the amount of rain that we do. So raising rates right now seems to me to be unnecessary and not a good use of our resources.
Sure.
I'd be interested in seeing those reports if you have them.
Yeah, thanks, Misty. I think the biggest rate driver that we have that's different than Portland, that's different than Gresham, that's different than a lot of other cities, is that we are building a whole new water system in partnership with the cities of Hillsborough and Beaverton. And that's really been driving our rates probably the past 7 or so years. That is a $1.6 billion seismically resilient system that's coming online next year. And that's something that a lot of other water agencies aren't taking on at this point. This planning for this new water source and system has been happening for 20, 30 years. We started building this system about 10 years ago in 2016. So that's really the biggest driver of our water rates right now. And that's, again, something that other water agencies aren't taking on. But we need to have an additional water supply source that is going to be seismically resilient when the earthquake hits at some point. So I know I'm not fully answering your question, but I just wanted to kind of provide some information as to why we're seeing really large rates in our organization and for our customers. But I'd love to get your contact information if you're comfortable with maybe sending that to Virginia or myself, and we can look into your utility bill and see if we can offer any assistance or help there, maybe have some discussion there.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to send my contact information when we're done with this call. That's not a problem. Once this
I'm sorry, Misty, we have very limited time for this, and I'm sure that you can have this discussion offline. I'd like to go to Bob.
Just curious, is the commercial rate increase the same as the residential rate increase, and is that all the information available on your website?
Yeah, that information is all available on our website at tvwd.org/rates. That information will be there.
And is the rate increase the same for commercial users as it is for residential?
Yes. And it's interesting because our customer base, just really quickly, we have 95% of our customers are residential and multifamily, while the other 5% is commercial, small businesses and industrial. So a lot of times a lot of our customer base does look different than, let's say, Hillsborough or Beaverton. So, but everybody would experience the rate adjustment, not just residential customers.
Thanks. Gary?
Linda, just to remind everybody, our water bill is for every 2 months, not every month. And I got a bill last year for like $750, which was for 2 months, obviously, but
Right.
I'm never home. And my wife had passed away 3 years ago.
No, I'm sorry.
And I do all my showering and everything at the Lifetime. And I requested you guys come out and reread the meter.
Mhm.
Well, they said, well, I was told by 12 Valley Water, well, you've got to know how to read it. You've got to have the right light. And I went out and there's no way you could read it. Original meter. I'm an original owner, been here for 33 years. And I said, have somebody come out and read it and then tell me when you're going to be there. Well, you guys did that. He came out and he said, well, Gary, you're right. Can't be read. So they replaced the meter. But my question is really, does 12 Valley really come out and read the meters? Because it's been that way for many, many months. I got a $400, $415 credit, but how many months was it read wrong?
Yeah, no.
I never pursued that because it just wasn't worth my time and everybody else's time.
Sure.
So
Well, Gary,
anyway, are these meters actually read every month?
yes, yes, absolutely. And I know we have limited time, Gary, but let me take this on and make sure that that we see it through and that we're having good communication with you. If you don't mind making sure to get your information or just your email or contact information to Virginia, if that's okay, and she can forward it on to me. We talk quite often through email, but let me look into that.
Okay,
Great.
Absolutely.
Thank you
Sorry,
very much.
everybody. I know it's a quick response, but I will definitely when I get your contact information, follow up with you. I promise you that.
okay.
Commissioner Treese, did you want to say a few words?
No, I think in respect to our time, let's move forward. Thank you, Virginia.
You're welcome. Okay, let us hear from Washington County Sheriff on update and information about the levy.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Virginia.
Hosting, can you please put those people's hands down so they're not on screen?
Looks like the hands are down. They look down on my end. We're good to go. Well, looks like Megan is going to be sharing our screen here for the sheriff's office. But while she's setting that up, I just want to give a quick couple caveats. One, I'm here to talk about the upcoming local option levy, which is measure 34-346. It's coming up on your screen now. Everybody should be able to see that. This is normally a pretty intensive presentation that lasts about 15-20 minutes with a little bit more detail. This is a shortened version. We've been given a very short timeline for this presentation, so it's going to be about 5 minutes. But I want to encourage you to look online at the county's website. You can just literally Google Washington County Public Safety Local Option Levy, and all the county information is there. So if your question answered here, just that's a spot to look. Second caveat is that I am a public employee and there's very limited things that I can talk about. I have to stick to the script. So if I can't answer a question, I'm going to have to refer that to one of our elected partners who are on the screen here. But just wanted to throw that out there. If it seems a little clunky, that's why. So we'll just jump right into it. Measure 34-346 is our upcoming local option levy. Now, this is going to be, again, the elevator pitch on this, which is essentially, this is the old levy is due to expire. So in November, there will be a local option levy on the ballot in November. Now, that will be a reset for another 5-year levy if passed. Okay, so this new levy will be essentially a chunk of about $337 million worth of service. So that's one way to just kind of wrap our heads around the level that we're talking about with the levy. Now, we're going from 44 cents per $1,000 of assessed value is what we're currently paying in Washington County property taxes. Now, it's important to know that is the assessed value. It's not if you Google your home or Zillow your home at the market, that's market value. This is the number that's truly on your county assessment form. So that is it is 47 now. The proposed cost will be 66. So it will be a 19-cent increase Now, it's important to know that the vote is not for the 19-cent increase. It is an all or nothing situation. So it's all of that 66 cents equates to that $337 million worth of service over the 5-year levy. So this levy services many, many things. So one way to think about it is if you live, work in, or travel through Washington County, this public safety local option levy touches you in some way. This is everything from our county's only jail. So in any county in Oregon, the jail is under the responsibility of the sheriff, and there's only one of them in Washington County. And then there's same with prosecution services, our district attorney's office, juvenile services, another one. So that even if you're dealing with the situation in one of our cities, municipal partners, Beaverton, Hillsborough, Tigard, Tualatin, Sherwood, they all funnel to the same jail, juvenile services, probation and parole, correction center, those type of things. So it's really important to know that it really is a collaborative wraparound situation, and it's all inclusive in Washington County. One of the main things that is funded through this local option levy is things like support for domestic violence survivors, and the follow through and follow up. Another thing that is one way to think about this is any sort of interagency team. So these are collaborative efforts around the county. So you could have deputies from Washington County Sheriff's Office. You've got officers from Beaverton Police Department, Tigard, Tualatin, Sherwood, and they collectively come together as an interagency team, and they tackle complex challenges. One of those challenges is the mental health response in our communities. So this is funded in part by the local option levy. So this is, in case for those of you that aren't aware of this program, it's a deputy in one seat or an officer, and then in the other seat is a licensed mental health clinician, and they go out and they solve problems together. If you think about, back 10, 15 years ago, the only way to solve some of those situations was to take people to jail. What the mental health response team allows us to do is get ahead of the game, divert these folks that are experiencing crisis, and kind of redirect them into more appropriate services where they can get follow-up, they can get connection with resources. That's just one of many of these sort of interagency teams, and we just like to highlight some of those. And Washington County is leading the charge, certainly in the state, but if not, across the nation in this sort of effort. So just one of the things to highlight. When it comes to the funding, I like for the criminal justice ecosystem, which is all of those things that we talked about, prosecution services, all the way from arrest, all the way to the jail. There are 4 main funding sources. And if you think of those as like legs on a stool holding up this ecosystem, one of those legs is our county's general fund. Another leg is our, for us in the Sheriff's Office of Patrol, is the Enhanced Sheriff's Patrol District, which a lot of folks here probably know a lot about. I think I saw a couple of the board members on the panel here, but and then another one is grants and other revenue services. And then the fourth one is what we're talking about today, which is the local option levy. And it accounts for about 16% of the total ecosystem for the public safety funding. And again, that equates to about $337 million over the cost of those 5 years. So you see on the slide there, if it's too small, I'll just kind of read a couple pieces that the cost is around $19 of an increase. The cost would be about $19 a month on an average home. So that's just an average home in Washington County, again, assessed value. And Megan, will you go to the next slide here? I think it might, there's a wrap up slide there. Go to the, you can continue on, next one. Actually, sorry, one more back. On that one, the other thing we want to highlight is the interagency drug team. I think it's on the next slide, but basically this is another way that we're able to tackle complex challenges in the community, and they're getting just extraordinary results. If you're able to make it to the one of the in-depth levy presentations, I really encourage you to go to those, because we really do take a deeper dive into some of that stuff. But with that, I will just hit the pause button, open it up for any questions. Again, I'm limited in what I can answer, but we do have some partners on the screen that might be able to help close some of those gaps. Thank you, Virginia.
Yeah, I did get a question where someone says, oh, we've already got a current levy. How can this one be replacing it? And I think they were looking at the ESPD, Enhanced Sheriff Patrol, which, yes, that is the current one, but this is the renewal of a different one.
That's correct. It's really important to know we have two levies that are sort of overlapping. And so right now this one is expiring, and then in about 2 more years, the Enhanced Sheriff's Patrol District will also expire, and then that one will be
Right.
sort of
Well, this
leapfrog
is
to make sure we can fit in
countywide,
that.
and ESPD is only in the urbanized, unincorporated areas.
That's
So
correct.
people
Yep.
need to not get them confused. I see some questions. Megan Hill, please make it brief. This isn't a time to give a speech. I don't know if you were planning to, but go ahead, Megan. Megan Hill. Okay, we'll move on.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Oh, there we can. Oh, got to learn how to unmute. Sorry, no speech today. I'm just wondering, sir, does this have any funding or involvement with the Family Peace Center project?
Yes, our Family Justice Center, which will be renamed the Family Peace Center, does have a
Yes.
piece of this in terms of its funding. I don't know the exact amount of funding, but certainly any wraparound follow-up and follow-through services that are hubbed at the county will definitely have a piece of this. To what degree?
Wonderful.
Maybe Commissioner Treese might be able to add a little piece of that, but it is my understanding that any of those will have a certain percentage of funding.
Sure, that sounds great. Thank you so much.
I also wanted to mention that the domestic violence has been losing federal funding. So it's really important that our county funding be kept up on that. Blaine?
Yes, thank you. For the mental health response team, is that, I know they're partnered with sheriff's deputies. Do the clinicians also partner with the local police, or is it just the sheriff's department and then you go into the police areas and kind of share jurisdiction for the mental health response team, or something?
Excellent
third
question,
option?
Blaine. And I'm really glad you asked that, because it really is a good chance to highlight the amount of partnership that we have with our city agencies. To answer the question, it is large metropolitan cities in Washington County do have members on that team. So Beaverton, Hillsborough. Well, Beaverton has stepped out temporarily, and we are closing that gap while they're dealing with the funding situation. But we have a South Cities team that is also helping. So that's Tigard, Tualatin, Sherwood, that space. And so, yes, it's a very collaborative effort, and it's not just the sheriff's office. It's multi-jurisdictional.
I want to say that because the sheriff's office is forward-looking, they pioneered the program in Oregon, and it has spread to other jurisdictions. So is part of a consequence of being urban policing focused that we have this service countywide now. So I appreciate your pioneering of that effort.
That's great.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you very much. Jim, it was great meeting you a few months ago, and good to see you again. Hope you're going to stick around for the program.
Great to see you too, and absolutely, I can't wait. This is an action-packed agenda.
Okay. Blaine, you want to put your hand down, and we will move along to Peter Leonard with the Cedar Mill Library. Cedar Mill and Bethany Library. I still have trouble doing that.
Yes, thanks for having me here tonight. I'm the executive director of Cedar Mill and Bethany Community Libraries, and I am not a public employee, so I can go off script. Our library, because we're in unincorporated Washington County, is a nonprofit library, but we're very reliant upon funding from the county. On this year's ballot, there's 2 big quality of life levies that are on there. One, you just heard about, the public safety. The other one is for WCCLS, the library levy. And the way Washington County works, individual jurisdictions, if it's a city or if it's a nonprofit in an unincorporated area, actually operate the libraries, but they all receive funding from the county. And there's 2 parts of that funding. One is a local option levy that expires every 5 years, and WCCLS must go before the voters and ask to have that levy either renewed or replaced. The other big section of funding comes from the general fund, also from Washington County. Then individual cities augment that funding with local tax revenue, where in unincorporated areas, we augment it with things like our second edition resale shop or private fundraising. So that's kind of the broad strokes about where we are at now. And the levy this year, measured 34,345, is asking for a replacement levy. It will increase the levy rate from 22 cents per thousand to 37 cents per thousand. And that equates to an amount for the average home with an average assessed value. It equates to $10.75 per month. And like the sheriff's levy, when this goes away and expires, it's gone. So you're not just voting on the increase, you're voting on the entire levy. The number was developed with extensive discussion, research, analysis from all the different member libraries trying to figure out what things might look like over the next 5 years. And the reality is libraries, as well as many public services, are not keeping up with inflation. So expenses are increasing. So that's why we are approaching taxpayers for an increase in the levy rate this year. So the way the county WCCLS spends the money, the majority of it ends up going back to local partner libraries that then use it to hire staff, to purchase books, to do all the things that make a library such a popular place to visit in the community. So the other part of the funding that the county uses, and it's through the levy as well as the general fund, is all the backroom infrastructure. Things like internet access, broadband for all the library locations. We have a common catalog where we have access to 1.5 million items in the collection. And then we have a courier that also transfers books from every different library to meet user demands. And then one of the biggest increases or biggest service growth is ebooks. And people may not be aware, but ebooks are oftentimes many times more costly for libraries than a print book might be. And they often have very restrictive licensing. So after a certain period of time, they just disappear. So WCCLS has been aggressively ramping up the amount of ebooks they have to meet user demands. And that continues to grow. So that's a very expensive process. So libraries are very reliant upon this. So I hope you read Voters Pamphlet, do some more research. Go to WCCLS.org, and they do have a section in there about the levy where you can do a little bit deeper dive on what the levy goes for. Or feel free to reach out to me at Cedar Mill Library. Happy to answer any of your questions. And keep on reading if you have time for questions. I know there's important additional topic tonight, but I'm happy to answer questions for a minute or so.
I love those ebooks on Libby.
Virginia, quickly, I would just like to add, since I can't advocate as an elected official, I want to encourage everybody to vote. It's very important. The library levy currently supports the libraries at about 45% of the total funding. Over the next 5 years, that will climb to 60%. So it's really important to get this funding in. Please talk to your family, your neighbors, your friends, and advocate with us for both the public safety levy and the library levy. Thank you, Peter, for your presentation, and Chief Deputy Wheaton, thank you for yours as well.
I want to thank the Cedar Mill Library for providing CPO1 with display space in the back of the building. We got maps and information back there for people to check out. I have a question. Does the funding process for this levy spread money out more to small and rural libraries?
Yes, one of the allocation schemes that has been underway was a chance to address some longstanding funding inequities. The long time funding allocation formula rewarded higher used libraries that had lots of use. So what they're trying to do, that kind of kept smaller rural libraries and startup libraries never being able to catch up and be able to add enough staff to keep open enough hours. So there is a little shift in funding. That being said, they tried to make it very fair. So all libraries will see an increase in the coming levy. And that should be good, but it's a collaborative effort trying to work with all the individual member libraries to have good outcomes, not just piece by piece, but looking county-wide to make sure everybody across the county has access to good service. And with things like e-content, it doesn't make any difference whether you live in a rural area, 25 minutes from a library, or whether you live right next door to the biggest library. You're still going to use e-content and need those resources.
Yes, indeed.
I would also encourage you to look at wccls.org/writing our future for more information. I think all of you will find it very insightful.
Great. I don't see any more questions. I just wanted to let everybody know a couple of things. Encourage everyone to vote. Tonight at 11:59 p.m. happens to be the deadline for registration. So if you've moved, if you don't happen to be registered to vote in Oregon, you still have a little bit of time. You can go to OregonVotes.org, I believe is the website, and get yourself registered and please vote. It may not be the sexiest, most exciting thing you've ever voted on, but it's, as several of our speakers have said, it's really important to our quality of life here in Cedar Mill and CPO 1 and CPO 7 and all of them. So that I thought it was really important to bring CPO 1 members this levy information, and I had a little bit of a struggle getting permission to do it. So I hope that the information's been valuable to everybody. With that, I guess we've got some co-hosts that are going to run this part of the meeting. So I'm not sure who's taking it over, but I will stand back and absorb information.
Thank you, Virginia. It's good to see you. Hello, folks. My name is Nicole Sting. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a resident of CPO 1 and also with the Department of Housing Services. Certainly, we know a lot of folks are here to hear more about the Cornell Road to Recovery Transitional Housing, and we'll be pulling up slides about that in just a moment here. So I'm going to pause while those slides come on screen. And we'll go ahead and move straight into the presentation as time is tight. As we often do in the department, we wanted to start with group agreements. Chelsea, just back one more slide there. This is a practice we have in our department to ensure we're engaging in a way that is fruitful and is able to, one moment, there we go, is fruitful and able to ensure we're all present, listening, and understanding. So first and foremost, lead with curiosity, openness, and respect. Speak from your own experience. Expect non-closure. What this means in this context, we're probably not going to be able to answer everyone's question, but we do want to be sure we're hearing your questions and able to respond to those as we develop this project and move forward. We hope you can keep questions concise. We know there'll be quite a bit. There'll be time for questions at the end. Be fully present today. We're talking, as folks know, about the Cornell Road to Recovery opening in fall of 2026. And as we have this conversation, it's important to be mindful that folks experiencing homelessness have been through trauma. Folks experiencing that have past or present experience of homelessness might be on this call. So just be cognizant of that as you're bringing up questions. And the next slide, we'll talk a little bit more about the purpose, why we're here. We want to share information as we're in the early stages of planning for the Cornell Road site and share additional information about the background and context of Washington County Homeless Services. We also want to gather questions from you, make sure we understand your perspectives, as well as make sure you know the next steps of this project and how to stay engaged.
I just wanted to quickly clarify. We were told early on that questions wouldn't be taken during this meeting, and so we gathered a lot of written questions and sent them in.
Yes.
And I hope that you guys had those. I hadn't heard anything, but I'm glad to hear that you're considering taking some questions during the meeting.
Yep, Virginia, apologies. We must have had some wires crossed. It's absolutely our intention to take questions. We've happy to take questions in email. We received those questions, and what we'll do when we get to the end is popcorn between the questions we received in advance and live questions. I know there's regular CPO1 attendees on the line, as well as folks that might have received a postcard in the mail from the department. So we want to give those folks a
We
chance.
also invited CPO7 because the facility is actually in CPO7. So I know we have a number of their folks too tonight. Anyway.
Thanks, Virginia, and we're glad to have folks here. Just to give us some context, the next slide outlines our agenda. Before I discuss the agenda, I want to give my colleagues a chance to introduce themselves. Jess and Jill.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jess Larson. I use she and her pronouns, and I work with in the Department of Housing Services as one of our assistant directors. And I'm pleased to be here with you all to talk about this new program and hear your thoughts and questions. Jill?
Thanks, Jess. I'm Jill Chen. I'm the other assistant director in the Department of Housing Services, as well as the Housing Authority of Washington County, and I use she and her pronouns. Thank you.
Thank you both. Well, we'll begin soon. Just to give you a context of where we're going, we'll share a bit of background on Washington County Homeless Services. We'll talk specifically about this site, our partnerships and our plans, and we'll take some Q&A, and then we'll end with additional opportunities for engagement, feedback, and ongoing partnership. So without further ado, I will turn things over to Jess.
Thank you, Nicole. And good evening, everyone. We really appreciate you taking your evening to come out and learn more about this future project in your neighborhoods. And we'll get right underway. We have a lot of content to share with you to give you some upfront information and get deeper into the details that may have been otherwise shared. Thank you for those questions that were sent ahead to help inform this content. But we do want to leave enough time at the end of the presentation for your questions too. So you'll be hearing more from Nicole as we facilitate that part of the conversation. So I'll just get right into the content of our specific program, but stepping back for one or two slides, want to talk to you about the work of providing homeless services as a system of response to homelessness in Washington County. We've been able to significantly scale up our response to homelessness in the recent years because of voter-approved resources called the Supportive Housing Services Measure. And you may have noticed that we have now much more significant shelter capacity than we had just a few years ago. We've added approximately 400 shelter beds that are open year-round. We also have a system of outreach workers that work in every corner of the county, reaching out to people who may be experiencing unsheltered homelessness and bringing them inside into our various programs. And sorry, could I go back to the slide beforehand? Or maybe that was a cue to move faster. I just a little bit more to talk about all of these programs working in concert with one another, because what's important is that we're helping to reach people where they are at as a system and move them through from shelter or transitional housing, which you'll hear a lot more about from us tonight about, into longer term permanent housing solutions that ends their homelessness. And every household may need something different depending on what they are experiencing or the root cause of their homelessness, whether it's wraparound supports to address a medical or mental health need, or ongoing rent assistance to address income levels, or a Social Security retirement check, for example, that isn't enough to afford basic rent in Washington County generally. So we pair lots of different kinds of housing interventions with the households who need those levels of support so that they can move out of homelessness into stable housing. And our transitional housing program that we're going to share more about tonight is a part of that ecosystem of different kinds of interventions to resolve homelessness here in Washington County. The next slide shows a map of where those services exist. Next slide, please. The slide, I think, I'm not sure how it's coming through for you on your end. I'm not seeing the kind of markers of the Highway 26 or other major key roads, but you can kind of imagine it stretches from Forest Grove on the left down towards Tigard and Tualatin on the right. And these little circles and numbers, and we have this information electronically available so you can dig into the details, but represents that distribution of these physical sites where shelter is offered, where we have access centers for people who are wanting to drop in for daytime services and get connected to those supports for that longer term housing plan. And then you'll see the two yellow dots, number 15 and 16, represent our future transitional housing programs. And we're really intentionally adding these programs into our system because we recognize the need for an additional type of shelter program or connection to permanent housing. Next slide, please. All right, so what the conversation you've all come here for, now we're going to dig more specifically into the Cornell Road Recovery Program, which is a type of transitional housing, or will be a type of transitional housing when it opens next year. Next slide, please. So in general, when we talk about transitional housing in our homeless services system of care, there are a couple key components for every transitional housing program that are required to meet a standard of care for the services provided to those who need that level of support. So first, we're going to ensure in every single transitional housing program that there are staff on site every hour of every day, all year long, to ensure that the participants are getting the supports they need, and there's a level of security and staff management to make sure that all of the programming inside that facility is offered safely, respectfully, with a mindfulness for the surrounding neighborhood and helping the individuals get the care and supports they need to get onto permanent housing. That work of permanent or 24/7 staffing includes case managers, and these staff members are trained in how to help people work towards their permanent housing plan, whether that's getting back to work or getting further recovery supports, or working to get disability benefits from Social Security or the VA, or getting on housing lists. That's what the case managers do. And then we have peer support specialists, and they're really designed to build out that more supportive behavioral health rapport and partnership with individuals as they work on their recovery journey, whether in a behavioral health kind of, whether it regarding mental health needs or substance use recovery needs. These peer supports are folks who've experienced similar challenges and understand what it takes to find health again and stability. And then we offer those recovery services that wrap around the individual in the program. We bring in supportive service providers to the site to offer on-site programming that will support sobriety, for example, in this transitional housing program. So those are some of the key tenets of transitional housing, but let's get into the more specific focus of recovery transitional housing. And that's the next slide, because the program we're talking about at Cornell Road is focused specifically on recovery housing and helping individuals who are going through the transition of coming out of a program where they had more intensive medical focused, if you will, recovery supports, and now they want to continue their work in sobriety and getting those recovery services they need while they work towards their longer term housing plan and their longer term life plan. So in a recovery focused transitional housing, we will be ensuring alcohol and drug free living environment for everybody who comes to stay in this program. So alcohol and drugs are not allowed on site, and participants are required to sign a participation agreement, which includes lots of different elements, but especially that they will commit to living sober while staying in the program. The recovery program also very intentionally is designed to partner with other intensive addiction treatment programs so that while folks are staying in our program, they're closely working with other recovery services that might be offered in different facilities wherever that person is getting their ongoing addiction treatment supports. And then we have those on-site services that I mentioned earlier that continue to wrap around those services to the individuals. So they're working towards permanent housing and deepening their own safety plan, their own wellness, and their connections back to community, whether that's employment or family or other kinds of long-term personal plans to get back to that stability. One thing I want to mention before we move on is there has been some question about the nature of referrals into this recovery program. And the word transitional housing can mean lots of different things and lots of different systems of care. Here in our homeless services system of care, when we're talking about transitional housing, we're talking about people who are transitioning from a mental health facility, or in this case, a recovery focused program, before they move into permanent housing. We are not talking about a program that is connected to the criminal justice system or receiving referrals directly from people transitioning out of the criminal justice system. So the referrals for our recovery program and our transitional housing program are specifically coming from other recovery focused on programs. Next slide, please. All right, so digging one step deeper about those referrals. Oh, sorry, nope. What's it going to feel like in the program? So first of all, I mentioned this earlier, but all participants will sign a participation agreement, and those participation agreements will include the adherence to the house rules, things like respectful behavior with other participants and residents, the quiet hours in the morning and evening, sober living commitment, and those shared responsibilities to managing the community space. There'll also be on-site resident advocates or peer support specialists. So they'll, in addition to having 24/7, there's going to be staff living in the program who are ensuring that 24/7 safety and security of the program. And a part of the requirement is that everyone remains actively engaged in their recovery services. So a part of the participant agreement, rather, in addition to following the house rules, each individual will also commit to engaging in whatever it means for them on their personal journey in recovery. And this may include attending groups on site or at other facilities, community service participation, employment efforts, working towards their housing plan, attending meetings with their case manager, following up with their primary care physician. Again, whatever those active engagement efforts might mean for the individual will be a part of their individual plan, and they are required to commit to that participation proactively. Next slide, please. So how do we do this work in Washington County? Well, our providers, and you're going to learn more about the partners specifically working on site at the future transitional housing recovery program in just a minute. But we also do this work in partnership with other service providers in the community. So these are partners who are going to help prepare participants for referral and their transition to our program, but also they're going to be working in partnership with our providers to receive people who need additional care while they're staying in our program, or may need to go back to the other program until they're stabilized again and can return safely to the transitional housing program. So this includes recovery clinics operating around the region, and especially in Washington County, hospital or inpatient services where people have gotten help. We're going to need to sometimes refer people back to those hospitals for ongoing medical care, for example. I've mentioned workforce development programs or helping people get job ready. These are important partners to us in our homeless services system. We also work very closely with housers, providers of permanent housing, who are going to help receive folks after they've stabilized and finished their recovery journey in our recovery program and move into permanent housing. That rapid rehousing is a different version of a permanent housing program. Job coaches and life skills trainers are going to be important partners to us. And of course, partners who provide 12-step support groups. These are the kinds of places our participants at Cornell Road Recovery will be going out to get their services and engage in their treatment actively and working towards that longer-term stability after they transition out of our program. Generally, folks come to a transitional housing program to stay about 6 months or so, and some will stay longer depending on what their needs, what they may need in order to find that stability, up to a maximum of 2 years. I hadn't mentioned that earlier, but that's a general practice in transitional housing. So the next slides get us into some of the key partnerships who will be working with us at the Cornell Road Recovery Program. So first, it's important to mention CODA. This is a well-established recovery organization working in Oregon with 14 different programs across 10 sites. And they have partnered with us recently and will be operating the new Beaverton Recovery Center, which is opening here just in a month or so. And it's just 5 minutes away down the road. So we anticipate folks who are going to the Beaverton Recovery Center will be getting treatment, like they'll be staying maybe 30 to 90 days in a residential program where they're getting much more intensive recovery focused supports. The facility will offer a sobering station and withdrawal management for anyone who's actively in their addiction and needing to stabilize. Those are services that we will not provide at our recovery transitional housing program because these are medically based services. So we rely on medical experts like CODA and the programs they will offer out of the Beaverton Recovery Center. But once someone has gone through those services and stabilized and is ready to get back to the community and back to their life and start working towards their long-term stability plan, CODA will likely be an important partner referring people into our program and continuing to work with them and support those individuals on their recovery journey. So that's one important partner we wanted to mention, and I believe CODA may be with us in the audience tonight listening in to your questions as they come. So please know we don't have time in the agenda to introduce everyone, but they are here with us and will be continuing to learn with us tonight. And then you'll be meeting them and other partners I'm going to introduce for you in a second in future in-person meetings that are coming up as we plan this project going forward. All right, the next slide, please. Virginia Garcia is another key and important provider. They also provide medical focused services, but more on the physical healthcare side of things. Currently, we're working with Virginia Garcia to provide a medical respite program for people who are coming out of hospitals and they've received the care they've needed in that hospital, but they're still recovering and they don't have a place to physically go while they're recovering because they're experiencing homelessness. So Virginia Garcia provides medical respite services for us in some of our in one of our shelter programs. And we've invited them to partner with us in providing those medical respite services at Cornell Recovery Road to enhance that suite of services and the people we are serving there. So we will be so grateful to expand this partnership with them as they help individuals who would otherwise, who are recovering from medical conditions from the hospital, but need a safe place to get well and transition to stable housing from. So speaking of, actually, our next slide is a brief story of an individual named Gene who stayed in Virginia Garcia's medical respite program. And he describes how sick he was when he was recovering after being hospitalized, and he really couldn't do much to take care of himself. So he was very grateful for the doctors and nurses who visited him in the shelter while he got better. And then ultimately, the staff and the case managers at the shelter helped him find a new apartment. And he says here in the notes, "I just signed my lease for my very own 1-bedroom, and I can't wait to finally move home. My mom is so proud of me," he says. So I'm sure Gene is doing well in his new apartment still. And that is the power of our medical respite program, catching someone in that transition from hospital to stable housing, and will be a part of the recovery services offered at Cornell Road. Well, my next 2 slides are to introduce to you the primary service provider who will be overseeing all operations on a day-to-day basis at Cornell Road Recovery. We had to go through an extensive service provider selection process to select this provider. They are responsible for management of the building, the upkeep of the building, the safety and security of participants in the program and the surrounding facility. And then that long-term housing planning for individuals who are served through the participate in the recovery program, as well as the day-to-day recovery steps that each individual needs while they stay in this transitional housing program. So it's a very important and expansive role. They will be the partner facilitating all the other partnerships I've just described. And so we needed to facilitate a procurement process to carefully select the most qualified provider agency who could step into this role of providing those housing services, recovery services, property management, and building asset management services I've just described. So we received 5 very excellent applications from qualified providers. And the process just concluded last week. And the award, or rather the intent to award the contract, was given, or the provider that was selected based on their qualifications is the next slide. I think we are doing a bit of an unveiling in this moment, is Helping Hands Reentry Outreach Centers. This is an organization that has been working across Oregon since 2002, primarily in coastal communities, but more recently expanded their services to Multnomah County and Yamhill counties. And we're really excited to bring Alan Evans and his team from Helping Hands to Washington County as the lead service provider of our Cornell Road Transitional Housing Program, our Cornell Road Recovery Program. So Alan, I know you and your team are here in the audience, and we're grateful to have you listening and looking forward to the journey ahead working with you as we enter into that contracting phase. We have a couple more partners to introduce to you, and I'm going to turn over to my colleague Jill, who manages the plans around the capital needs of the building, because there are a lot of renovations underway to prepare the physical site for this future program. Jill?
Thank you, Jess. And for those of you, I run the real estate or the building side. So my discussion will be very short, and I'm sorry, my light is not working very well. So similar to what Jess talked about in terms of working with partners on the building development and design side, we also went through a very selective process to go through a request for proposals for a contractor and architectural firm. Similarly, we went through, had 5 bidders. Walsh Construction is leading the team of design development, and Nick is leading that project management. With him is Karen from MWA Architects, and they're also on the phone today to hear your thoughts, your comments. And we are thrilled because the team will be working with Washington County to ensure that our building works for the folks we are trying to serve as well as our community, working at building integrity and structural as well as the programming. Next slide, please. So in terms of the working, we've already worked with some of the folks that just mentioned, such as Virginia Garcia, and now we're intending to work with Helping Hands to finalize some of that design development. Construction will start towards the end, towards the early next year. And part of that is because of the requirements for permitting, as well as a longer lead time for certain materials and building materials. Construction will take about 9 months, and we will be looking for sort of an opening in October. And with that, I will turn it back to Nicole. We'll talk about community engagement.
Thank you. Well, folks, we'll get to questions in a moment, and I see some people with their hands up already. But before we do, we wanted to provide just an overview of what's coming next to inform what questions you might have. First and foremost, we're in the early stages. We're in our informational session. We will do additional conversations as we look to develop a neighborhood plan or good neighbor agreement. Jess spoke about that briefly during her slides, and we'll talk more about that after we take your questions. But want to give you this overview. We're in October of 25, and we expect the site to open in October of 26. So we do have quite some time to work with you and develop our good neighbor agreement and make sure that is in place before we open and launch the program. We also, as Jess mentioned, would love to host an in-person get-to-know-you session with our partner Helping Hands. We're now working on inking that contract and getting them formally on board. So we appreciate your patience as we get our ducks in a row and bring on Helping Hands. But we'll go ahead and move straight to questions. I see hands up, but as I mentioned at the beginning, we'll take first the questions that we received in advance. And this is one question we received from the neighborhood group, but also from a number of different sources. The question I'll pose: how will the county and its operator, Helping Hands, address potential issues like loitering or unauthorized visitors to prevent disruptions to the community?
Thanks, Nicole. Is that a question for me?
Yes, it is.
This is our first practicing of this. That's an excellent question, and one we're looking forward to digging into with our with neighbors and with our partner Helping Hands at the table. So that is a part of the Good Neighbor Agreement process, where we look to hear about all of the concerns and questions that are coming up from neighbors, and then mitigate those concerns and questions with a clear kind of operational plan. So for example, in one of the neighborhood agreement processes we went through with one of our shelter providers, they agreed to, in partnership with the neighbors, to do a kind of a perimeter check. I believe it was every hour or with some level of frequency, to ensure that there wasn't any loitering, and to make sure that folks who may be hanging around either were waiting at a bus stop and had a place to go, or had clear understanding, because it was also reflected in their partnership or their participation agreement rather, that that participants wouldn't loiter around the property. So those are ways in which we work with the neighbors and the service provider to clearly define what's okay and what's not okay, and what are the parameters for managing that.
Thank you, Jess. We'll go ahead and start going to audience member questions. I'll take them in the order they were, the hands were raised. So the first one is Anna Maria.
Hi, my name is Anna Maria Ganzi, and I have a question again about
kind of more safety questions. Given the proximity of this housing program to a neighboring school, which is just down the street within the boundaries of Sunset Presbyterian Church, can you please elaborate on what specific risk assessments and safety measures have already been conducted to ensure that the program does not increase safety risks for students, staff, or families? And if you don't mind sharing, prior protocols or partnerships that you have or are planning to have to monitor or mitigate any potential security or behavioral concerns. So it's really piggybacking on the prior question.
Thanks, Anna Maria. I really appreciate that question. Jill, I'm curious, do you have any thoughts on how to answer like what's already happening since we are the owners of the property? And then I can take how we would work on continuing to manage safety concerns when the program begins.
Sure. And Anna Maria, thank you for asking the questions. We are here to answer it to the best of our abilities. What we have right now is essentially a property manager providing 24/7 security. There is the property management company is actually on site during the day, making sure that the building itself is secure, as well as the you can call it utilities are functioning, the property itself is functioning. We will be continuing to do that until the development or the construction starts. At that time, the contractor Walsh will be working and making sure that the building itself is secure, as well as making sure that the call it their equipment, the construction is not disturbing the public. They'll be working on the building during the day, Mondays through Fridays. Once the building opens, I hand that to Jess.
Thanks, Jill. So before the building opens, that was a great baton pass. Before the building opens, we'll work actually on fleshing out some of these expected contractual requirements in our contract with Helping Hands. So they will be required to have certain policies in place to manage for safety for the participants who are in the program and for the surrounding community. So some of those safety requirements are going to include like room checks, making sure that there's no contraband in the program. Like I mentioned, perimeter checks of the surrounding facility. They'll also be required to have, accessible contact information for any concerned neighbor, establish relationships with public safety officers working in the neighborhood, and ideally relationships with their neighbors so that they know exactly who to call if something goes wrong. Of course, there are security cameras on site that will be managed as part of those 24/7 services. So we get into those details first in the contract and the policies that are required by the program operator, and then through monitoring that contract and ongoing partnership building with the surrounding neighbors.
Thank you, Jess. I believe the next hand we had up is Megan.
Oh, all right. Can you hear me?
Can, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm trying to formulate all of my thoughts and make this as succinct as possible. I am with the Oak Hills Homeowners Association as the board president. There is one significant point of clarification that I believe truly needs to happen and an associated question. Recently, and it was reiterated on this call, Emily Root stated in an email that Cornell Road Recovery will receive referrals from participants that are not just criminal justice programs. So that to me very much infers that there will be referrals potentially from criminal justice programs and not just the other recovery type programs. The other piece to that is very inaccurate, and I continue to double down on, is there have been public statements from both Commissioner Harrington and Emily Roots regarding an OAR statute 255 0600009 that establishes that sex offender residency restrictions only apply to permanent housing, not transitional housing. So now that we have cleared up the definition of transitional housing, and there is an Oregon statute that says that there is no true residency restriction, particularly not that that includes transitional housing. My question is, what specific and enforceable measures is Washington County willing to adopt that are going to keep the 3,000 students within 1 mile of this transitional housing program? That what measures are going to be adopted to keep the violent person-to-person and sex offenders out of this and categorically prohibit them from residing at this site, because that challenges the safety and security that we also have. And I do want to be very respectful of those who have that lived experience of homelessness. But I will tell you, I have lived experience as a sex abuse survivor, as do very important people in my life, and our experience is equally as important.
Thank you, Megan. I really appreciate you bringing this question to our meeting tonight. Team, I'm going to lean in. I know we've been working on a response to the questions that came out of Megan, what Megan is describing last week. Has that response been sent out to, okay, so.
We have, no, we have not received any meaningful responses, and nothing from any elected officials, I'm sorry, Commissioner Teresa, you as well, with the exception of Kevin Barton, who has no authority in this at all. He has been nothing more than helpful, but he has no real pull. We have not received anything more than a copy and paste email from Emily Roots. So no, Jess, respectfully, no, that is not accurate.
Okay. Well, we will look into it. I know that your questions helped us, required us as county colleagues across departments. So working in partnership with our community corrections colleagues and the sheriff's office and the DA. So thank you, Megan, for your very clear questions. We jumped into state law and various requirements to better understand the requirements that we'll be working within as we operate this program. And I know that that information has been gathered into a response, and it was either about to be sent out or hasn't yet gone out. I'm not exactly sure. So I think it's gone out, but I will help it. I will answer your question using the content in that response. And then be assured, Megan, we'll make sure you get this response one way or another. So yes, as you described, there are lots of different definitions to transitional housing, and there was reference to state code that was specifically written in as a part of the state code relating to the Department of Corrections and transitional housing serving people coming out of the correction system. And we wanted to clarify, first and foremost, that that is not the nature of this transitional housing. This transitional housing is specifically recovery focused and will be receiving referrals for people who have gone through a recovery program and are committed to their sobriety and will be engaging in the program to continue their sober work, or their work towards sobriety while they work towards permanent housing placement. So that is the nature of this transitional housing program. It is unrelated to the corrections system. Secondly, I'm thinking back to your question. So I'm hoping that helped answer where are referrals coming from part of your question.
That does. And Jess, I can email them to you. I'd be happy to visit with you, but I just want to ask a clarifying question there.
Yep.
Yes, I appreciate the distinction in those different types of transitional housing, one coming specifically from, the justice system. That said, is that going to be in the Good Neighbor Agreement? So are we going to say that no referrals are accepted from the justice system because we have information from the Housing Authority or that advisory committee that says that it could potentially come from there? So if there's any potential, then we need to also look at parallel safety measures to combat against that. And that the biggest question is, yes, and I am in full support of recovery. Just let me say that, full support of recovery. Are we going to provide a categorical exclusion for violent person-to-person criminals, or those that are at minimum level 2 and level 3 sex offenders, which include the highest risk category? Because these people, while focused on recovery, could still have a criminal background that demonstrates poor choices that shouldn't put them within 1 mile of 3,000 students, including all of our kids. Not yours. I don't know if you have kids. Everyone's families. This is scary.
Thank you, Megan. And I appreciate those concerns. And that is a part of this journey we are all going to go on together over the next year as we work to design a good neighbor agreement that is responsive to the concerns shared by our community. I encourage you and others who are concerned about registered sex offenders to dig into the state law and how that sex offender registration system works. That is how, as a housing system operator, providers, those are there's state law that governs the way that those requirements work that are outside of our purview. And I don't want to speak personally here.
Sure.
So we look to the the State Department of Corrections to manage for those concerns that you're describing. And those, the State Department of Corrections is, designed to think about how, as you describe, violent offenders might return to community after they serve their time in a corrections facility. But that is not what our program is designed to do, or who our programs are designed to serve, or their programs are designed to serve people who are going through recovery while experiencing homelessness and helping them find stability. And to answer your question directly, in our shelter programs, as a programmatic approach, we don't restrict access to shelter for people who are experiencing homelessness based on criminal background checks, because that would introduce a barrier to someone who is seeking shelter. And that is a wide-standing federal practice and is tied up in our own funding source requirements. And it's a good practice to help people who need shelter get inside, find stability, and then work towards stable and permanent housing. So that is not going to be the practice of this. It is not the intended practice of this recovery program to create background checks that restrict participation based on criminal histories.
So it is a low barrier program.
Well, that's thank you for that follow-up question. For low barrier has many different definitions or concepts attached to it. There are ways we create barriers in our systems, and there are ways we remove barriers to help people get services. So a barrier that is being introduced, if you will, to this program is a requirement that everyone participates in the program and that everyone stays clean and sober while participating in the program. Those barriers don't exist in other kinds of shelter programming. So we don't generally call this low barrier because there are requirements around participation. And if folks come to the program and they don't participate, they will be asked to leave.
Sure. Thank you for
Megan,
that.
I know this is an important topic, but there are a lot of people with other types of questions, and we need to be a little bit mindful of the clock.
I appreciate that, Virginia. We will go ahead and move to the next question. And Megan, thank you for sharing your personal experience in a respectful and compassionate way. We'll go ahead and move to Bob next.
I just want to say that I have a lot of experience and knowledge of the Helping Hands organization and the Bobby Lakes Hope Center, and actually worked with a group of local community leaders about 3 years ago to try to find and place a shelter similar to the Bobby Lakes Hope Center somewhere in Washington County to help us And I don't have a question here, but just want to say thank you to Washington County for their efforts in building this or creating this shelter and hiring helping hands. I can fully understand and appreciate the concerns of the neighbors, but I would call this a high barrier shelter because you have to play by rules to get in and stay there. And I won't say there won't be ever any single problems, but the operator, Helping Hands, has a phenomenal record at their 8 facilities, Bybee Lakes and 7 on the coast. And I'm very proud of their selection for this facility.
Thank you, Bob, for that feedback. I'll go to the next hand, and I apologize, I'm not quite sure how to pronounce it. Yahazi?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, and thank you for giving our community the chance to share our thoughts. My name is Ya Zhe, also go by Jessica Wang, and I live just a few minutes from the proposed shelter site. And I want to begin by saying that I do understand the importance of supporting the individuals experiencing homelessness, and I truly believe in finding the compassionate solutions. However, I have real concerns about placing this facility so close, again, echoing to what Megan said, to two schools that serves around 3,000 students every day. Like, for example, I have 2 young kids who walk to the school every day. And our neighborhood is designed as a quiet and family-focused area, and safety and stability are our priorities for all of us, especially our children, right, who walked into and from the school daily. And I like to ask the county to reconsider whether this is the most appropriate location. Are there any other sites with better infrastructure, access to public services, or public transportation is much better, and less direct impact on school zones? And we want to be part of solution. But we also want to ensure that a plan balances compassion with practical safety and community considerations. Thank you for listening and taking this, our residents' input seriously.
Thank you so much. And we do take your input and feedback seriously. Simply put, if we were to map the distance a half mile from schools in Washington County, there would be very little land left. Wonderfully, we have a very healthy ecosystem of educational facilities across the county. And that means kids are going to school in proximity to homelessness every day because we have shelter programs, access centers throughout Washington County. So the way we approach this issue is by very intentionally designing programming and working with the community to develop that good neighborhood agreement so we can clearly identify the concerns and work to mitigate and create some clear boundaries and expectations for the partners working on the program, to create a culture of safety and practices of safety in the event that something could go wrong. In fact, we often find that safety concerns decrease when our programs come into a neighborhood because there is such a heightened sense of attention and awareness and partnership from the service provider. I can fully understand that that statement might be hard to believe and does not feel comforting in this moment. But if we built our homeless services system response around locations that were a certain distance away from education facilities, we might not ever be able to open a shelter's door anywhere in Washington County. And that would actually do a greater disservice to the safety of our kids and our community, because we know that our community feels safer when we respond to homelessness with options and places for people to go. So I hope that this can be an ongoing conversation with you and the neighbors about how we create that culture of safety and intentional partnership with the surrounding community when this program comes on site.
For the sake of time, I'm going to keep us going. Francine, I believe you were the next hand.
Francine, are you there? Unmute.
I see you are off mute, but I'll go ahead and go to the next person and we'll come right back to you while you work out the audio issue. We'll go to Greg next.
Yeah, I'll try to be brief. So I'd like to provide just a little bit of background. So I am the father of a previously very active drug addict who's been in and out of prison. So I have a lot of empathy for trying to find housing for people. Having said that, one of my questions, I won't go over it again because it was similar to Megan. It still seems to me that there should be lines drawn, and people that have less severe issues, like someone that's has a violent background or someone that has predatory sexual background, it would be great to find some way to not have those people in this particular facility close to where kids are. The second question you could address, because I think you've already addressed that. I'm just reiterating that I have a much different background, I think, than a lot of people, and I still am very supportive of, trying to keep this to people that are extremely motivated and aren't at a high level of risk for the community. But the second one is, I assume by what you said, I get that people have to adhere to the program, they have to stay clean and sober, but is there going to be some kind of 2 or 3 strike rules? So if people are misbehaving, I mean, again, I saw this with my own son, if they're doing everything that they need to do to stay clean and sober and to fit in with the rules of society, fantastic. I mean, that is just great, and I'm proud to be in a community that we would do that. But there are people that aren't ready, and what do you do with those people? So I'd like you to address that one, and also if you could find some way to send out the link to the presentation, I'd appreciate that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. I appreciate all those questions and comments. Very helpful. Sorry. Let me see if I can go in order. So first of all, you asked about a two or three strikes, you're out rule. I think that's not quite the language that is used in this programmatic work anymore, but it's a similar concept. It's how are we progressively engaging the individual towards their recovery and creating clear boundaries and expectations, so that, second chances are given, but boundaries are set, and folks are helped to exit the program if they cannot commit to full participation over a certain amount of time. So this is a specific programmatic design that we'll look to our experts in helping hands to create. Of course, as the overseers of their contract, we will make sure that they have a policy for managing how to exit participants who are no longer successfully participating, or a sufficient number of tries have been made, and now it's time to ask them to look elsewhere for help. So that will be a programmatic approach that will be designed in partnership with Helping Hands, and then we will oversee and ensure their implementation of it. When it comes to those concerns around individuals with certain criminal histories in their background, while we may not be excluding individuals based on criminal histories, there will be very clear expectations for how participants show up on a day-to-day basis, respectfully, safely, compliantly with the programmatic expectations. And if they cannot participate in that community culture and milieu, is that the word, safely, respectfully, they will also be asked to exit the program for failing to participate effectively in the program. So I do want to stress that there will be zero tolerance for unsafe or aggressive or behaviors that are concerning in the program, and as participants come and go from the program.
And
Can you
Francine,
send out the presentation somehow?
Oh, I knew I missed a question. Thank you, Greg. Of course, I know that there will be a follow-up and staff will be managing to make sure that all this information is shared.
Thank you again.
thank you. And Francine, were you able to get the mic working there? All right, I'm still not hearing you. I'll keep you in the queue, but we'll go ahead and move to William.
Good evening. My name is William Picorni. I became aware of this project in the middle part of this year, and I looked at it, the dynamics, mostly from the financial aspects of the purchasing of the defunct DoubleTree Hotel. I find that there are records that start significantly from April of 2018, and the unit was sold for $11.7 million. And it sold again September of 2022 for 14.5 million. And the county ended up buying it this last winter/spring for $19 million. The acceleration of the appreciation of the cost of this building, when the DoubleTree was failing financially, it should have been a whole lot less money. As it stands right now, you have paid $237,000 a unit, which you propose to build. And I am sure that when everything gets modified, it's going to add a price that will approach $500,000 a unit by the time it's over and done. And I just am concerned about the way the money is being spent from the beginning of this whole project and the follow-up that I'm sure is going to come down the road. That's all I have to say. I don't have a lot to say, but I'm a retired civil engineer. I've managed a lot of construction projects and things like that. I understand the dynamics of these things, and I'm troubled by that. Thank you.
Nicole, you want me to respond? And thank you so much for your comments, William. Really appreciate your insights. I'm on the real estate side, so we do look at all the projects in terms of what is that fair market value. We have received an appraisal on the property as well prior to the acquisition of the site. We are also looking at it in terms of location to our, you can call it the service providers, especially as just mentioned, to the CAT Center, the different centers that we had listed in the presentation. There is not that many available sites that we can access that are along the transit and easy to use, that will also be able to accommodate the population we're serving, including the entrance, exit, number of units, as well as any of, as I mentioned, the rehab and their sort of programmatic design work. As we look at this building and the cost associated, a rehab actually works out to be somewhat less costly than if we built new. So happy to discuss and listen to any other comments. But we really do appreciate your comment as a community member who is also looking to optimize the resources we have.
Thank you for that question and the response, Jill. Francine, I'm going to give it another go. Are you able to come off mute? All right, I apologize. We're not hearing you, but at the very end of the slide, we'll share an email where you can send your question to if we're not able to get to it before the end of the meeting. I'll go to Niku next.
Yeah, hi, thank you so much. So I have a quick question, and you may have already answered this, so I apologize if it's a repeat. With the referral process, is this like you guys are able to receive referrals from hospitals if a patient is needing placement in a transitional like facility? Like, is that the process? And then if it is the process, is it like we go through Helping Hands to start that referral process, or would they reach out to you guys directly? Like, what does that look like?
Niku, excellent question, and it's really complicated. So I'll try to keep this high level, but we have a coordinated entry system, as all homeless services systems are required to have, that creates clear eligibility and prioritization protocols for how people can be referred to certain programs. So this would, all of our housing programs fit under this process. But that process includes a step that is both the assessment, so gathering the information, as well as prioritization, who needs this kind of service the most, what is, and then the next step would also, a step would also include case conferencing. Is this program the right fit for this individual? So there will be layers to how that referral is made and specific procedures for evaluating both eligibility and prioritization, and also programmatic alignment. And so if an individual has gone through recovery, let's kind of paint a picture here. Let's say they've completed a recovery program and then had something, they twisted their ankle and now or maybe they broke their ankle and they ended up in the hospital over the weekend, but the ankle is stabilized. They would really benefit from continued recovery supports, and they don't have a place to go and sleep, and they have a broken ankle. Well, that's a great referral for a hospital to reach out to our system to say, hey, we have someone who needs recovery housing and needs a safe place to sleep because they're homeless and they've just broken their ankle. So would you consider this individual? And then Helping Hands would receive that referral and likely assess that that recommended referral indeed fits with their program before following up with the hospital to finalize that referral stage. I think it's a lot more technical than I just described, but I hope I illustrated how there are kind of procedural pieces in place in the system, and then the connections made between the service providers.
Yeah, no, that completely makes sense. But with that example, would there be like, with Helping Hands, and for instance, we were able to get that person placed, would there be like a rehab facility, like rehab therapies available to them? Or would it be something that, for example, the hospital would provide like a third party to come in and do the rehab there at the facility? Or would there already be one on site available to them?
Excellent question. So there are different kinds of rehab, right? There's the rehab for the ankle, and then there's the recovery or the continued work in their addiction treatment. So we hope to have some services for both offered on site through Virginia Garcia, providing those medical supports. So maybe checking that like the wound is stable and yep, looks like you just need more time elevating that ankle, for example. And then also those like maybe going to a 12-step meeting that's offered by Helping Hands as peer support specialists. But they will also need to be working with offsite rehab, if you will, supports, because maybe that individual is using some medication to support their recovery, and they need to go see a prescriber, a medical provider who can prescribe that medication. That probably won't be available on site, but Helping Hands will connect them to their primary care provider, whoever is the individual making that prescription. So there'll be both some level of recovery and medical services on site, and some level of those services, and many levels of those services off site that the providers are connecting folks to.
Got it. And then there would be like a caseworker that would follow that person after the facility, like after their time at the facility, to like ensure that they are still, going to their program, like meetings and stuff? Or is it like while they're at the program, the caseworker is following them?
Well, when they live in the program, that's where the case management services are most enriched. So depending on what the individual needs after they finish the program, some folks need permanent case management services. Other folks things really worked and took hold, and they've got a job now, and they're off to live their independent life. And so they'll still have connections that in case things go wrong and they need support, but there won't be a full kind of case management level of support following them. So it really depends on what the level of supports are each individual needs as they transition out of the program.
Got it. Got it. Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you for your questions.
Thank you. We have just a couple of questions left. I'm going to see if we can get through them all, but we might need to just wrap before we can. The next hand up is Melissa's.
Hi, can you hear me? Hi, my name is Melissa and Laird, and I wanted to go back to talk a little bit more about the referrals. You talk about them coming out of recovery-focused programs. Could you give a few examples of those programs? And in particular, talk about how they make their decision, what kind of background information that they have on their individuals that they use when they make a referral to you. And I just wanted to make a comment with respect to criminal referrals, which I understand you will not do. Justice-involved individuals or adults on supervision, once their supervision is over and is ended, then they are no longer in that system. Nobody is monitoring them. So they, may have been in that program, no longer in that program, have gone through some kind of recovery-focused program and could potentially be referred. So if you could just kind of talk through that on how these recovery-focused programs make their referrals, because you're relying on them to make referrals for good people that are a good fit for this housing project. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Excellent question. And that is all correct, that an individual may have had criminal history and may have completed their time on supervision with a probation officer or something like that. And so they wouldn't be coming to us through the criminal corrections system, but perhaps that individual was struggling with an addiction and got into a program like the new recovery program in Beaverton, where there's, that kind of real, sorry, my words are escaping me, enriched level of staffing and medical services on site to help folks when they might be going through withdrawal or needing to have that medical management while they are I'm sorry, team, I'm forgetting the words to describe a recovery program services. So they will have been in an intensive kind of residential treatment facility. And then their time is completing there. They've been successful in their programs. They've stabilized. They want to continue in their recovery journey, but they don't have a stable home to go to. So the things that the referring partner will be answering questions in their referral to our recovery transitional housing program about are things like how long have they been in recovery? What's their recovery plan? Their commitment to their ongoing recovery work? What's their last residence? How long have they been homeless? What's their plan for housing? Do they have income? Do we need to help them get back to work? Do we need to help them get on disability incomes? So helping us understand the individual and kind of the circumstances they're coming from and the medical and behavioral health support that they've been getting and will continue to need as they step down into this lower level of care in our transitional housing program.
For the sake of time, we're going to keep it moving. Saurabh, I believe you are next.
Hi, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Saurabh.
Okay. Well, thank you for the time and thanks for the opportunity to ask a question. I have a couple of questions on the theme of safety. Whenever background checks have been brought up in this conversation, there has been statements made, even in public, by including Chair Harrington, that data does not demonstrate that background checks result in safer programs or better outcomes. And I've asked for the data and I've not been provided with any hard data for for a facility of this size in this kind of a neighborhood. So, either the data exists and you can share it, or it doesn't exist. And if it doesn't exist, then we are all part of this big experiment that the county is doing, including on 4,000 children. And I don't think it's correct. So please share the data. That's one thing. Second thing is, what do you expect the success rate for this facility will be? So out of the 80 people that will reside, 80 participants that will reside here, how many, based on your experience, I hope the county has experience in a similar facility in similar neighborhoods. What is the success rate of these individuals? How many of these 80 individuals, the first cohort, for example, will make it to permanent housing within 2 years? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Saurabh. It's good to hear from you again, and I appreciate both questions. So regarding the research around, are criminal background checks a good predictor of housing stability? That's the data we're referencing, or the research we're referencing when we describe our programmatic understanding that eliminating people from accessing a program based on their criminal history may not actually result in better outcomes for those individuals or the safety of the program. And this research is referenced in the HUD on HUD's website. Sorry, I'm looking for the reference. If anybody wants to come offline or share that, please do.
Jess, I'll happy to phone the friend and assist here. We look at HUD's recommendations for reducing barriers for assisted living, and that is the materials we're going to. HUD published a white paper on this last year, detailing some of the studies. So we'll be sure to include that link in a follow-up FAQ, so you can go to that and see what we're referencing.
Thank you. By the way, white papers are not peer reviewed, right? And so I can come up with a white paper with something. My point is the location of the facility is the problem, not the facility itself. It is very, very close to so many kids. And you guys refuse to do any kind of background checks, which is baffling, right? I mean, I don't know. It just, I think, put the facility there, do the right thing for everybody, including the participants, do the background checks. That's all. That's all we're asking, really.
Thank you, Saurabh, and we hear that feedback and understand that request. And at this time, that's not our intention, because again, it's our experience programmatically that background checks can exclude people from programs who are going to be successful in those programs. But we appreciate that feedback. And I wanted to also speak to your second question around our expectations of success. This actually comes from Helping Hands, the operator. Their experience is that we can expect about 75% of residents to successfully transition from this transitional housing program. So that means moving on to permanent housing or other stable housing options and leaving the program because it supported them to make that next step towards stability.
So we have time for one more question. Francine, I see you're in the queue again. I'll give you a chance to unmute, but if we're not able to hear from you, we'll move to Dave. I'm so sorry. I think there's a tech issue. We'll be sure to get your question.
Hello.
Yes. Oh, we're moving to Dave Ogle.
Hey, good evening, Nicole. Good evening, Jess. Thanks for hopping on and giving us this information. Really appreciate the time you're giving us and the opportunity to ask questions. So, kind of dovetailing on what you were speaking of on the percentage of success versus unsuccessful. So, Helping Hands indicates 75% success, which is great, and I assume that those folks would go on to permanent housing and move on with their lives, which is pretty amazing. In terms of the 25% that are unsuccessful, what does the housing authority envision the plan being to where where do those folks go, right? So is there, do those folks go back to say a treatment facility? Do they, I don't understand where the unsuccessful participants go when they're asked to leave. And can you elaborate on that a little bit more for me?
Yeah,
And thank you very much. Appreciate the time.
absolutely, and appreciate this. Good question. So this will be a part of the service providers' programmatic requirements. They're going to have to share with us and create a policy around how they facilitate terminations. So someone who's not successful in the program and needs to leave, how does Helping Hands make sure that person leaves well, both in how they, you know, physically depart from the building, but also where do they go next? So connecting them to the next best option, which would likely be a shelter program that doesn't require sobriety, which is the case for all of our shelter programs. Of course, we don't allow use on site, but one does not have to be sober in order to go get shelter at a different shelter program. That's what separates, well, one of the things that separates this recovery program from our emergency shelters. So Helping Hands will create policies and procedures of how to support the successful exits of folks who are being terminated from the program because they can't succeed in their participation. And we will make sure that that includes like physical connections to the next best option for that individual. I hope that, okay.
Nicole, my name is David White. I waited for 45 minutes. I raised my hand.
David, I'm so sorry. We'll make time for your question. We might speed through the answer, but for some reason you were not in line in the order I was seeing. So I apologize for that. If you want to jump in quickly, you will be our very last question before we wrap up.
And hopefully our host can stick around after 9 o'clock so we can have a few minutes for CPO1 issues.
Oh man, yeah, I would like to talk, and now I have to be quick, and it's going to be hard. I'm going to start by saying my name is David White. I've lived in Washington County for 75 years. I'm an old guy. I live right directly across Cornell Road from this facility. And the first time I heard about this facility was in a meeting that Jess had with Oak Hills. And so I think at this point, and I've written you a 3-page list of questions. I think it had like 7 or 8 questions. I thank you, Washington County, for responding. And this morning I responded to one of your answers, specifically regarding criminal background checks. So I'm going to go through, as I was listening to your presentation, I didn't know that I'd be able to talk, but I have a couple of comments, I guess, and you don't have to respond to them. And a person kind of already addressed this. A person who's not in the criminal justice system, and I used to be in the Washington County DA's office, a person who is not in the criminal justice system, but for referral, could have a background in criminal behavior, and which would include assault, burglary, felony theft, and sexual assault. We seem to be focusing on sexual activity, but we don't want somebody in this facility who has a background of assault and burglary and other issues. So I think the criminal background check might catch this. Your financial person mentioned that, well, there just aren't that many facilities and it's hard to find them and it, they're expensive and stuff. And so I'm just starting to hear that really the issue here is this facility, this hotel became vacant. And so we were looking for a place and so we bought it. And we really didn't have public meetings and until now, I guess, talk to the public about the propriety. Is it a proper facility? It was an opportune location and you bought it. And not many, she said, were available. The good neighbor agreements. I've heard a lot of talk about good neighbor agreements. I've asked the question in my first memo, are they enforceable? I've heard just kind of like, I don't know, rumors that they are not. And I haven't tried to research this, but what good is a good neighbor agreement if it's not enforceable? And then enforceable against who and what are the I don't know, sanctions? Is it enforceable against your provider, the county, whomever?
David, I appreciate
You want to talk.
I appreciate these questions. Jess, I'll ask you to address the last one before we wrap up. Sorry to cut you off, but I just know we're close to 9.
Forget that one because I have one more comment. And it was the last point I made today in my memo to you folks. This idea that, and I appreciate this, Jess has said it, other people from your county have said it, that we really need to have these types of facilities because these people need an opportunity. I'm looking for my memo. Oh God, this is really so hard. Here it is. You have said that it is harder for people to achieve sobriety if we do background checks, and that's been proven by blah, blah, blah. My answer to you, and I'm going to read this very quickly. This position is understandable and commendable, but please understand, we are not in opposition to individuals in our community receiving help that they need. We are not interested in creating barriers. However, we do oppose certain criminal and potentially dangerous individuals being invited into our community next to schools, a church with daycare, residential homes, and businesses. This seems to be a benefit and burden analysis. You are coming down on the favor of potential criminals who might benefit from getting some sort of sobriety help. And we favor that. But
David, I appreciate your comments, David. We'll certainly continue the conversation as we develop that Good Neighbor Agreement. It is right at 9. We have 2 slides left. I'm going to speed through them and get this back to Virginia for other CPO1 business. We appreciate all your questions today and hope to continue to work with you. Chelsea, will you move to the next slide? One more. This slide outlines a Good Neighbor Agreement. For the sake of time, I'm going to skip it. We've heard quite a bit about this today. The last slide I want to present on is just the next step. So we certainly, once we're in contract with Helping Hands, want to schedule an official introduction. We'd love for it to be in person for you all to meet some of the partners you'll be working with. We have some questions from the original CPO list that we didn't get to. Certainly there's hands still up. So we'd love to send out FAQs for the answers we have concrete responses for. We are committing to doing that by end of day Monday. So you'll get that follow-up from us end of day Monday. And we'll begin the Good Neighbor Agreement process in early 2026 to begin designing that for the planned October opening of this facility. We're also starting a monthly email series in November. If you've emailed the board, if you've emailed Homeless Services inbox, that email on the bottom there, you will be added to that list. We'll provide construction updates, updates on additional community engagement opportunities, and continual time updates. If you're not sure you're on that list, you're welcome to send that email or send an email to homelessservices@washingtoncounty.oregon.gov to be added, or reach out to the CPO folks. I'm sure they'll be glad to forward on your information and make sure you're on that list. I really appreciate your time. Sorry to be rushing through and over time at the end. Virginia, I will turn things back over to you.
Thanks very much. Will you be using the CPO email addresses to send out these responses? Because I'm not quite sure otherwise how you're going to be able to reach all the folks that were here tonight.
Yes, we'll send it to our interested party list, as well as the CPO list, and ICA will help us make sure you all get it.
Great. Yeah, thanks. And I'm sorry, there were a bunch of questions that did not get dealt with tonight from the list that we submitted, but I think we found all about how people felt about sexual abuse. Yes, so just quickly, the November CPO meeting will be Wednesday, November 12th, because November 11th is Veterans Day, Memorial Day, Veterans Day, and staff doesn't work on that day. So we're looking at Wednesday, November 12th. We will have CPO1 elections. And if anybody is interested in a leadership position in CPO1, please let us know. I think that's about it. I look forward to learning more about the management group and how they're going to manage this facility in Washington County when they're spaced on the coast, but I assume that's been dealt with. Are there any comments about CPO1? I know some of these people still have their hands up for the previous discussion, but is anybody wanting to talk more about CPO1, tree keepers?
Yes, actually, I just have a real quick question while we have a number of people on board here. Do we know who is managing or the trees that were planted on Cornell Road? The reason I ask is there are tree bags watering these newly planted trees, but it's hard to navigate to find out who is doing that work from Washington County.
I can find that out. I'll look into that. I'm sure it's got something to do with land use and transportation.
Yeah. And also Tree Keepers is doing a lot of stuff around, but I think between our newsletter and the Cedar Mill News, the word is getting out. So thank you very much.
Yep. I think that's about it, unless anybody has any other CPO issues or questions. We had fantastic turnout at the Cedar Mill Cider Festival. I hope some of you guys were able to enjoy it. We had a beautiful day and delicious cider and lots of entertainment and fun. In the past few years, we've had a tree lighting, but we don't seem to have a committee that wants to work on that. If anybody's interested, get a hold of me. I'm not going to run it. So I guess with that, if we don't have any other comments or questions, we will call it an evening. And be sure that I will follow up on this stuff with Cedar Mill News. If you don't, I know this is sounds like self-promotion, but if you don't already get the news, go to cedarmillnews.com and sign up for free, and it'll help you stay in touch with all this stuff. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night, Virginia.